I've been afraid of owning my own power my entire life, and this week I found out why. And then I made the scariest financial decision ever yet. The fear of owning your power not only keeps you small, but it also keeps you broke. You keep executing on strategies that were never yours to begin with. And it keeps you invisible to the very people whose problem only you can solve. This week, I stopped hiding. And by the end of this video, you will find out what exactly was in my way and why it might be in yours too. Hi, my name is Ajita and welcome to my YouTube channel. With over 20 years of corporate executive experience, I am now the strategic advisor to tech founders and senior tech leaders, upgrading their internal leadership architecture to lead at visionary scale. What I share in this video is my live business building experience. I am not building this business from hustle and grind. Instead, I'm using 4 key principles, what I call the 4 I's: infinite intelligence, identity, intuition, and inspired action. This is my live case study of building my business from $0 to $4.4 million revenue in 12 months or less using the Epic Leadership Operating System framework, which is proprietary to me, and this is the same framework that I use with my clients as well, where the Epic word stands for E for emotional operating system, P for physical operating system, I for intellectual operating system, and C for consciousness operating system. Week by week, you will see invisible changes that create visible results. We are now on week 7 and let's see what's shifted. Let's start with the inner operating system changes, and we'll start as usual with emotional operating system. This week, something kept nagging me in the backdrop. What actually started that was a mentor of mine that actually told me, Ajita, do you know that you are already operating at the level that you're aspiring and reaching for? And that statement actually made me pause, because she's not the first person to have told me this. I've had so many people around me that look at me, I have looked at me and said, you're already at this level. And when they say this level, the level that they're referring to is the level that I'm aspiring to be, but in their eyes, I'm already there. So this really made me pause and ask myself, why is it that I don't see myself the way others see me? Meaning, why is it that I can't see the greatness that others see in me? So it was a very powerful and a profound question for me to ask, because here's the thing, when you start seeing patterns of people repeating the same thing to you or behaving the same way with you, we tend to look at it only for negative things. But in this case, all these people around me that have constantly been telling me that they see me at a level way above the one in which I am either operating in, or I think I'm not there yet. And they keep telling me that, no, you're already there. So they are seeing something in me that I don't see in myself. So of course, I paused, I paid attention to that signal coming from the external world, not once, but more than once. And I asked this question, why is it that I can't see my own greatness? Why is it that I don't see myself at that high level of operation or even beingness that others see in me? And the answer, obviously, ask and you shall receive. The answer was so clear. And the answer I got was, you're afraid to own your own power. That actually moved me emotionally quite a bit, because there was truth in it. That truth made me emotional. And I said, yeah, of course I'm afraid to own my power. And so I asked myself, okay, so where did this start? When did this start? When did this even come from? And I was then shown some incidents, not just from here and now, but from across time and space. For those of you that believe in past lives, this might be a brain candy for you. So I was able to see myself in a different time where I had immense power that was bestowed on me, that was mine to leverage, and I seem to have misused it then, and also remembered all the different other incidents and historical references where power was misused. So this is a very interesting thing that came to me for alchemy, as in shifting, transmuting. This is not the first time I've worked on this item though, but this time it felt complete. That's the most important thing. So any of you that are fans of the legend of Atlantis, if you resonate with that kind of a story, there is some connection for me with respect to that particular legend or timeline or history, call it whatever. And that is the point at which the misuse of power was obviously visible to me. And that is probably when there was a cellular memory present. For those of you that think of this as a story, enjoy it as a story. For those of you that can relate to it because you have resonance to this story. It seems to have been stored then as, that I can't trust myself with holding all that power that I know I can leverage. So I had to work through it, and I simply made a declaration. I closed my eyes and I said, I'm now declaring to release any aspect of lack of trust in myself or fear of misusing power anywhere present. I declared for it to be cleared out of my energetic field. And that, I think, was one of the best things I did this week. The main reference for me in this alchemy of this particular memory is that was then, this is now. That experience then has helped me now to make a different choice. I have now something that I didn't have then. What is it? Wisdom, right? Lived experience, they say, brings wisdom. So remembering that incident, understanding where things may not have gone as per my desire or expectation or misuse, if you may, has allowed for me to appreciate that, yes, I now understand, not only own the power, but also how to leverage it for the best and highest of everyone involved. That has been the wisdom that I captured from that experience. And I said, okay, now let me close all those experiences because they're not serving me anymore, because it has now become a cage in which I'm trapped. Oh, I can't use my power. Because of that paradigm, I haven't been able to fully show up in this world. So I think that has been a big shift to say, okay, I'm ready now. I can own my power and show up and be visible and share in a way that has impact in this world. I don't have to be afraid of owning my power, which would mean I'm now fully saying yes to the version of me that others already see in me, but I wasn't ready or prepared to accept as mine. So that has been my biggest emotional operating system shift for this week. And before I move to the next operating system, I want to leave you with this question. What is that fear that is holding you hostage from the life that you are willing and choosing and desiring for yourself? Please answer this question for yourself. And of course, if you feel called to, please let me know in the comments below. Then I can read and interact with you through this experience as well. Now, let's move on to physical operating system. This week, I had a very surprising breakthrough with my physical operating system. Surprising because I wasn't expecting it. It is like, when you have one data point stored a few years ago, connecting with a new data point in the here and now, suddenly the dots connect and they make a picture. And you're like, whoa, I now see it, right? So what happened this week for me was connecting fascia. Fascia, which is, if you don't know what fascia is a connective tissue that connects all our organs in our body, okay? And fascia was always something I was not aware of. And I think it was 2020, 6 years ago, I came across a product because I was searching for what to do about cellulite, okay? After 2 kids, your body kind of goes through whatever it goes through, and I had cellulite in a few places. I was curious, how do you get rid of cellulite? And I came across a product called Fascia Blaster. It was created by a lady called Ashley Black. And so I was fascinated with this product. It's a thing that you hold and you kind of massage it in your body parts where you have cellulite. What that does is it actually smoothens the fascia underneath the skin. There are layers of your skin and then comes fascia that connects your organs. And I got fascinated with it. I bought the products and I even invested in the company back in 2020-21. And I read a book that Ashley wrote about fascia and its role in how it keeps memories and trauma and emotions stored in the connective tissue. I read it back, 4 or 5 years ago. And then this week, as I was working out and as I was doing yoga more and more, I realized suddenly this connection, the safety quotient in your body, how safe you feel to receive support, love, money, everything, right? Receiving is directly related to how smooth and well hydrated your fascia is. Like you can never connect these two things rationally, logically, but it did connect for me because I'd already read that book. And then this awareness came to me because as I was doing my hip stretching, they say hips, especially for women, is where all the unprocessed emotion is stored. That's why hips are very tight. And as I was doing the yoga, that's when the awareness came that, okay, this is interesting, because the more I find the tightness, it shows that my fascia is holding on to something, right? That whole tissue is holding on to a lot of something, which you can call memory, emotion, feeling, whatever, or trauma, whatever you want to call it. Like, name it, label it, whatever you want to label it as. And this awareness then made me realize that I've been having this intuitive nudge to buy the next version of Fascia Blaster that Ashley has come out with. It's called Nexia. It's an automated fascia blaster, runs with motor. I haven't ordered it. And then this connection happened in my awareness that this is why I kept getting this nudge to get Nexia, which is a fascia blaster, because using that tool in the areas where there is such tightness, what it does is actually releases the stored trauma or emotions or tightness. And that made me realize a lot of us, and if this resonates for you, let me know in the comments, a lot of us are holding back from receiving because the memory or somewhere in our body, we feel it is unsafe to receive, whether it is receiving love, receiving money, receiving support, receiving anything, right? There's a level of lack of safety. A lot of people talk about nervous system regulation, which I do talk about as well, and I will be talking about as well in terms of what I use. I've talked about havening, I've talked about EFT. So there are tools to regulate your nervous system, which is great, but nervous system alone is not sufficient, because nervous system regulation deals with nervous system, and fascia deals with the connective tissue organs in the physical body in terms of how you operate your physical body. And I think these two connect in the vagus nerve that kind of gives you this feeling of safety. So you want to address the challenge in multiple ways. Like, that's why I use the 4 pillars of my epic leadership operating system. You deal with the emotions by acting on the physical body, which could be using something like a fascia blaster, doing yoga, stretching. All of that allows for the fascia to stretch and the emotions or the stored energy to be released, right? So that was my breakthrough with the physical operating system. Needless to say, I did yoga this week. I did dance, learned a new semi-classical dance routine this week, and that was so much fun. And the last message before I move away from physical operating system is that your body is not separate from your business. It is actually an instrument for you to be able to serve in the capacity that you're asked to serve or meant to serve in your business. Your physical operating system is an integral part of that process. So make sure that if you're not hydrating, eating properly, sleeping properly, exercising, make sure you're making time for all of that, because that has been my biggest shift since I embodied this new identity. Is these routines that I'm doing, yoga, exercise, dance, they're all getting rid of the parts that are still physically remnant with the old identity fragments. I'm kind of releasing them through this physical movement as the last step in the process. Okay. One more thing before we move off of physical operating system. As you probably are noticing, I have a little bit of congestion, and this week allergies took over my physical body. In some sense, it came as a blessing in disguise, because I decided to take rest. I've learned to honor the fact that when your body says you need to rest, you do. And no amount of hustling, pushing through is going to work. I hope it helps somebody out there that is dealing with the habit of overworking or workaholism, that you start to pay attention to your body before it starts calling you for attention. Intellectual operating system. This week I had another huge shift or breakthrough, specifically when it came to pricing my services. The reason this became a point of reflection for me this week is because I did have I think I mentioned 2 weeks ago that I had a sales conversation with a prospect, and I quoted my price, and he didn't quite say yes immediately, right? So I always look at the external world as a reflection of what's going on within me. So when the person did not jump and say, yes, take my card and get me started, it was clear that I had some resistance to that price point. So I sat with it and I reflected and I asked, what part of me is not in alignment with this price point? And then I found out 3-4 things. First was that I was changing 2 things about my offering that I've never done before. The duration is different and the price point is also different. So I had the option. To say, okay, I'm going to keep the duration the same and increase the price, or keep the duration less and decrease the price, right? So that It's only one element that I'm changing, or keep the price what it was before with the reduced duration. So I'm only changing one lever and not both. I had that option. Instead, what I did is, let me deep dive into which part of me feels that this duration and this price combination is something that I don't feel comfortable with. What is in my operating system, intellectual operating system. So I found a bunch of things. The biggest one was, this feels too easy to be charging that kind of money. That was a breakthrough, because everything else, all other reasons that I had where I could dismiss it because I could see through the lie in them, if you may. But this one really hit home, because I said, okay, let me then understand what makes it easy for me to charge this much for something I feel is like I can do this in my sleep, right? So I did a math. The math that I did was this: how much have I invested in money, time, energy, blood, sweat, equity, all of it, to make this work that I do with individuals and corporations easy for me, okay? And the math it blew my mind. I'll give you a quick breakdown. This might be helpful for any of you that are dealing with any type of price resistance, increasing prices that you are finding resistance. Is going to be a gold of a process for you to do. So the first thing I did was, how much have I invested in myself till date? And I only took the last 10 years, because before 10 years, I was not into personal development. I didn't invest in myself. I just did some certifications, professional certifications, and so on. In the last 10 years alone, I have invested more than $500,000 in me. When I say in me, I'm talking about certifications, personal development courses, programs, mentorships, masterminds, teachers, a whole lot, okay? All of it put together is $500,000 in the last 10 years. And then I said, okay, and then what about all the time that I have put in the last 10 years only, the time that I have put in working on myself? Because everything that I'm bringing to my clients is a reflection of who I am today. Who I am today is a reflection of all the inner work that I have committed to do. Yes, in the last 10 years, assuming I put in 10 hours a day in my inner work, which is true because I'm constantly have been working on myself. So it's about 36,500 hours in the last 10 years of just the work that I have done, inner work on myself, the time that I've spent in working on myself. Even at a conservative hourly rate that I was getting paid anywhere, that investment put together comes to about $35 to $55 million, depending on going on the lower rate versus the higher hourly rate. We're talking about $55 million. This is just the last 10 years, accounting for $500,000 worth of money that I have spent in investing in myself, and the time that I have spent put together comes to about anywhere between $35 to $55 million. And then if I look at my 20-year corporate career, the number comes to close to 100 million. I've invested $100 million in myself to be who I am today. That makes the work that I do with anybody, whether it's an organization or an individual, at any amount, $25,000, $50,000, doesn't matter. They're getting a concentrated version of my transformational energy in their space for leaping in their business growth. That is what I'm bringing to them, in their leadership growth. That's what I'm bringing to them. And when I did this math and I looked at it, I'm like, $25,000 is low. $50,000 is a steal. So when you do this kind of a comparison, it kind of made sense. Of course, it feels easy because I've done all this work over the last 20, 30 years. So that's what I'm bringing to these people that makes this price point a no-brainer. And so I really want to leave this mechanics with you for any of you that are watching this at any point in time. If you're questioning whether you are ready to raise your prices, I want you to do this math and see why what it is that you do, your mastery, your zone of genius is worth or valued so much more than what you think it is. When you do this math, you will find that out. The paradigm that I shifted was I need to do more in order to earn more. Instead, I anchored myself in the truth. The work is already done. I'm simply receiving the investments that I've already made. Such a big shift. So the second shift that happened intellectually in this week was, last week I mentioned about my outreach, right? I was sending messages, 10 messages a day. I was in the flow. I had already done 5 calls, and all that actually extended into this week. I did maybe 7 or 8 more calls. And then I realized that this process was draining me. It was not feeding joy. It was not bringing joy. It was not bringing energy to me. So I paused and I said, okay, I'm not going to push through. This is one thing I have really, really learned in this journey, is when something feels like you're pushing something uphill, please stop and pay attention, because that is your higher level of consciousness telling you, no, doesn't feel aligned. So that made me stop. And then I reached out to my business strategist program lead and asked her, this is how it feels. I mean, it doesn't feel aligned. She said, no problem. You don't need to do that. Go work on the ideal clients that you want to serve, even though they may not be known to you, warm leads for you. Start working on a strategy that they have provided to me on how to do the outreach for them, and start getting in front of them. Just focus on that piece. And it felt so much more expansive the minute I heard that from her. Why is this part of an intellectual operating system shift? Is that the need to hustle, the need to do more, to earn more, also ties back here. So, the ask of us more and more these days, with the energy of the planet even shifting more and more, is you're not expected to do more. You're expected to be more of yourself. So when you're more of your own self, to be more of yourself, you're able to bring your authenticity into the mix, and that leads you in all the choices that you make, all the actions that you take, and all the decisions that you make. And so the compass again, now what I've pointed it back now to is, joy is my biggest guide in this journey. If something doesn't bring me joy, I'm not going to do it. Why? Because it's my business. I'm the owner of my business. I'm the owner of my reality. I am not answerable to anybody in this world. None. I'm only answerable to me. And if I don't find joy in what it is that I'm doing, why am I forcing myself to do something because somebody else is asking me to? The only reason I will do that, and this is important for those of you that are listening to this, the only reason you will do something somebody else tells you to do is because you're afraid that you will not reach your outcome if you don't follow their direction. That's the only reason. That is fear. And I had to catch that fear for myself this week. And I said, no, this is my business. This is my choice. How I run it is up to me. If it doesn't bring me joy, I'm not going to do it. Because here's the difference. It's important for those of us that are high achievers, that have done extremely well in our life, career. We're not lazy. Let's not confuse alignment with laziness. Because you're not lazy because you're not doing outreach. No, you're not doing outreach because it feels too masculine, too forceful, too chasing. If it's not aligned outreach that is very intentional and very focused, just mass outreach no longer aligns because it feels too masculine. It is not aligned anymore with the energy of who we are. So pause, don't force function, don't bulldoze your way through these things. Instead, pause and ask what feels aligned, what brings me joy. So this is another interesting and important intellectual operating system shift for me, is do less is more. Do less, be more, and be more of joy. Consciousness operating system, my favorite operating system. So this week I had an amazing confirmation of something that I saw in meditation last week. In last week's video, I mentioned about a visual that I had during my meditation where I'm standing on stage and speaking to a bunch of people, and right after I'm done speaking, 20 people come up to me and 4 people end up becoming my clients from that 20 people. What I did not tell you last week in that video is that each one of those clients were $1 million clients for me. And the reason I'm sharing with you right now this particular data is because when I was in a mentorship session with one of the mentors that I'm working with, so when I was asking her for guidance, saying I've declared to the world that I'm going to get to $4.4 million in 12 months or less, and I asked her what is the next best step to take, or how do we even know what's next. Then she mentioned, what you're doing is actually advanced business energy work. So she tuned into my energy and she asked me, you do know that you're going to have 4 $1 million clients, right? And I hadn't told anything about my meditation to her, nothing. I simply said, this is my declaration, this is what I'm tracking on YouTube, and I'm curious to know, what's next. And I did talk about the fact that I'm headed to Silicon Valley, Bay Area. And that's when she tuned in and she said, you do know that each one of these clients are going to be $1 million clients, right? That just gave me goosebumps. And that was the best confirmation for me, because to see one thing in a meditation and then to have somebody completely unrelated to that aspect validate exactly what you saw in your meditation, that's not coincidence. That is confirmation from the infinite intelligence one of the 4 eyes that I'm working with in my business. That's pure confirmation from infinite intelligence that that is how it's going to unfold. I don't know the how, I don't know the when, but I do know that's how it's going to unfold. So that's been amazing validation for me, that the identity that I'm embodying, that this version of me that has already achieved that outcome, is simply in the joy of unraveling the process through which I get there in the physical reality. And her main guidance to me was, don't go looking for anything. Your one big job is to stay in that identity that is already accomplished and let it come to you. And that's why I made joy as my biggest indicator or compass to move through this journey from this point on. And last but not the least, in Consciousness Operating System, this week I made one of the boldest decisions I've made financially. When I joined one of the masterminds back in November, at that time, the clear intuitive guidance that I got was to actually join the next level in that mentor's mastermind. But my mind, logical mind, talked me out of it, saying, oh, that's too high of a price point to invest. Let's just invest in this level. So I bought into it and I invested in that lower level mastermind. But the nudge constantly kept coming back to me, saying, no, you are meant to be there, but you're here. It's time to move. It's time to move. It kept coming back over and over. Now, I didn't know whether this was my desperation to get there or it was my guidance, right? I needed to discern the two. So I asked, as always, I asked the infinite intelligence. I asked, okay, what is going on? Is this my urge or a desperation, or is this really intuitive guidance? And of course, the intelligence that is infinite answered, you know it is intuition because you were asked to join that back in November. But your story was, you don't have the money. In truth, my investment balance at that time was way more than what it is right now. Okay, the markets came down in March of this year with the war that was announced, and all stocks went down. So in the process, I almost lost $50,000 just in a matter of few days in my portfolio. So infinite intelligence literally points me to that direction and say, that money that you lost, that evaporated into thin air, that's the money you could have taken in November and invested into this program that you were intuitively guided and asked to join in. But your logical mind talked you out of it. Are you going to continue to stay in the same story that you don't have the money? Or do you see that you have the money to take out and invest? And so I sat with it because it's a very interesting response. Because the only reason I would not invest at that level by taking money out from my investment is two reasons. One, I don't believe that that investment will bring me returns, right? That's one reason why it's safe there than here, right? That belief. And the second is, I don't see myself worthy enough to invest that much in myself, which is true for a lot of us. I mean, I have invested $500,000 in the last 10 years. I know people that invest $500,000 in one program. I do know people like that. And I know there are people that have invested $0 in themselves. They'll buy books, but they'll never join a program. They'll never join a coaching program or have a mentor, paid mentor. They don't. Different people, different strokes, right? I'm simply giving you the perspective that all of these spectrums of people exist. For me, the question in this case was, do I believe this investment that I'll make in myself will bring returns? Heck, yes, without a doubt. Okay, so then what's the second one? The second one is, do I believe I'm worthy to invest at that level? There I had to do the work. I had to do the work there to shift how I see myself, coming back to the greatness that others see in me, but I don't see in myself. I had to bring that back into myself to align. And then I also did a logical calculation. Okay, what's the worst thing that's going to happen? I always ask this question, not that what is the worst thing, but what am I fearing will be the worst thing that will happen, right? So when I asked what is it that I'm fearing will happen, I'll take the money. It'll grow me, but it may not give me financial results. So I said, logically, let me put a deadline. I'm going to put a deadline that I'm going to invest this money by end of June at the latest. If I don't make this all square up somehow, because my offerings are at a very high level, it doesn't take too many clients for me to hit the number that I need to in order to pay all this back. So there is that deadline. Logically, I've given myself a deadline to say, okay, by end of June, I should have gotten all of this back because I'm doing the work. I'm staying in the energy of, that this is the identity of someone who's accomplished that outcome already. So the reason I'm sharing this pieces of different aspects is because you really want to dig into your internal operating system for the beliefs that you hold, for what you believe you are capable of receiving, worthy of investing in, and also address your logical mind, because your logical mind also requires some kind of clarity. I'm doing these activities based on my joy. I'm doing all the external work without the hustle in it, and in the energy of it already happening magnetizes what needs to be brought into my awareness, into my reality, for moving into making the results happen. So that's another big piece of a decision that I took that is already in motion, and I've already confirmed my joining the next level mastermind, and I'm super excited about it. It's a year-long mastermind with some amazing souls, amazing people, and I'm really excited to be in the company of these kind of individuals that will really help me dream even bigger than I have, and be able to bring that energy to my clients that I'm working with as well. The last aspect in consciousness operating system is one of the things I realized this week is constantly looking at what pattern am I breaking for my own self. For example, the old version of me would absolutely not have touched the investments for making money available to be able to go into a high-level mastermind. Not happening. The old version of me would have not done that. The other thing is the IRS tax, back tax audit results that came through a few weeks ago that I talked about. The old version of me would have somehow figured a way to just pay it off and not deal with the conflict or with the problem that comes with that whole package. The new version of me, she's not relenting. I have decided to not give in to that. Instead, I started going through page by page, and guess what? I found quite a bit of mistakes. And so I'm now hiring an attorney to represent me to make sure that this whole outstanding comes down to practically nothing. One big thing you want to watch out for when you are leaping into a new identity is ask yourself, am I still doing the same things that I would do if I were the old version? Number one, am I still thinking the same thoughts as the old version? Am I still feeling the same feelings as the old version? And am I still believing who I am as the old version, right? Epic framework. Am I still feeling? Am I still taking actions and decisions from the old version? Am I still thinking as the old version? Am I still believing that I am the old identity? Those four. Ask yourself, because if that is so, then you want to move yourself out and say, okay, the old version, this is what she would have done. The new version, which is me, this is what I'm doing. They are not the same. This has been so powerful for me because I keep asking myself, even the outreach, I've done plenty of outreach, cold, warm, everything in my businesses in the last 7 years. So I'm not afraid to do outreach. This time when the constriction came, it became very evident. It's not that I'm afraid to outreach. I worked through that fear and I did the outreach. It was just not aligned, which is a different level of awareness to say, okay, I've done all these ways of running my business. The one thing I have not done is this, which is speaking from stage, which I have not done yet for my business. And two is, a strategy to have a different kind of an outreach to get people to talk to me, not the cold and spamming kind of outreach. So there are two mechanics that are coming to my awareness to go and approach for my business building that I've not done before. So now I'm like, okay, this new identity, those two things feel right. So let me proceed. So I want to leave you with this awareness or this question for you to ponder. If you are in the process of stepping into a new level version of you, ask yourself, what are the new actions, decisions, choices that this version of me will make today that the old version would have never made? That is where the true shift lies for you to in the embodiment of the new identity. If you related with any of these internal operating system shifts or have any aha moments that have come through because of my shares, please let me know in the comments. Now let's move on to the external operating system shifts. As expected, this week I have not done a whole lot externally because I did complete I think additional 7 to 8 calls. So in total I would have done about 15 calls or so this 1 week of warm outreach, and as I mentioned, it was not feeling aligned, so I've stopped that process. This week I also signed up for a 2-day event called Systems Within, run by one of my mentors mentors who coached me for my Enterprise Agile Coaching certification. And in this systems within, it's actually about understanding how your familial, your ancestral patterns may be holding you back in some aspects of your ability to make the leap into the next level version of you. And the reason I was called to join this program, the awareness that the pattern of being in debt that has come up big time now for me is very related to my ancestry. And so I was really called to sign up for this program to see what aspect of me still feels loyalty by being in debt, or some kind of loyalty tied to the system that I belong to, the familial system. And the program uses constellation approaches, actually, systemic constellation. And many of you may have also heard about family constellations. So if you have not checked them out, it's pretty powerful an activity to move the energy of your ancestry or your family or genetics that is holding you back in your ability to leap in your life. This week, I want you to leave with something profound. Everyone tells you to invest in your business, invest in ads, invest in strategies, invest in marketing, invest in sales, but no one tells you to do the math on what you've already invested in yourself. And you heard from me this week, just doing the math on how much I've invested in myself monetarily, time-wise, energy-wise, in my career, in my business. That math alone opened the eyes to the asset that I am today and what I bring to the world in my capacity as an advisor. None of us are starting from zero. Definitely not you. Every crisis you have survived, every challenge you have overcome, every setback that you have bounced back from, every time you chose growth over stagnancy, discomfort over comfort, every bit of all of this is who you have become as a result of those choices, as a result of those decisions, as a result of those actions. So look at yourself as someone who has exponentially grown as a result of what you have invested in yourself, because you are compounding in your growth. Your growth is not linear, it is exponential, it is compounding. So don't question your worth, because you are priceless. You're worthy simply because you exist. And please do not confuse value that you bring to the world with your worth. Your worth is infinite, but the value that you bring, you can put a price on it based on how much you feel you have invested. I've given you the math in this video. So go back and reflect on how much you have invested in yourself and how much you have overcome, how much you have survived, how much you have bounced back, your resilience, your persistence, your perseverance. That is what you bring to your clients, to people that you serve. The question is not, can I price my services at this level? The question is, what is the impact that you're bringing because of who you are being to this world? That's it for this week. See you next week.